The arrival and the terror begins. The year 1914, a small island where there is no city, no crowd of people, only a lighthouse, and a secret which is hidden in the depths of the ocean. The film begins with a ship sailing through the South Atlantic Ocean towards its destination. There was a weather officer named David on that ship. They were heading towards an island that was hidden in the deepest parts of the Atlantic Ocean. The government had sent David there so that he could observe the changing weather on that island. David was to stay there for about a year, to collect data, understand the strange changes in the weather, and then return back. The captain was taking David to that island on his ship. Along with this, there was also food for a year and all the necessary items. After a long journey, he finally reached the island. They landed on the island with the help of a boat. Also, bring your essential items. There was a lighthouse on the island and a small house where David had to live because a weather officer had lived there before. But now his duty time was over. From today, David had become the new weather officer of this island, and the old officer Robert was now going to return home in Captain Excel's ship. But after going into that house, they were surprised. There was no trace of any human being. The furniture was scattered inside the room. Everything was upside down. Maybe there might be someone in the lighthouse. Captain and David, without wasting any time, head towards the lighthouse and see a strange sight there. The entire lighthouse was surrounded by sharp and pointed logs, as if someone had deliberately closed it so that no one could go inside. Captain and David knocked the gate of the lighthouse several times, but got no response. Finally, he pushed the gate hard and entered inside. Right at the top of the lighthouse, they found a man named Gruner. He was lying down. When he asked Gruner about the old weather officer, he responded quite nonchalantly. He is dead. He had some terrible disease. When the captain asked him about the dead body, his answer was even more strange. Maybe someone might have killed him. Both David and the captain were shocked to hear Gruner's words. He thought perhaps Gruner's mental condition was not good. But until they get the address of the old officer, they cannot do anything. The captain told David that if he still wanted, he could come back with him. But David knew that if he could provide accurate weather reports of this island to the government, he could earn a lot of money, and he needed the money anyway. That's why he decided that he would stay here. The captain gave him a gun for protection. Maybe this place isn't as safe as it seems. After the captain left, David settled the house a bit, made it livable. In a drawer of the room, he found a diary of the old officer. That officer set foot on this island in 1913. A lot was written about the island in the diary, but not everything was clear. Some things were incomplete. David read each line carefully. There were also sketches of some strange animals in the diary. David did not understand why he made such pictures. Maybe he was alone and did this to pass time. His wife's photo was also there on one page of the diary. David got tired of reading that diary, and slowly he fell asleep. David started his work the next morning, but as soon as he reached the sea, his steps stopped. Among the rocks were some stones decorated in a strange manner, and some seashells were also placed among them. In a strange pattern, David thought maybe Gruner had done all this. Thinking this, he again got busy with his work. Collecting weather data was the work he had come here for. While working, when he looked through the binoculars towards the lighthouse, he saw another person along with Gruner. But then he thought maybe it was his misconception. First encounter with the unknown. It was night and David was busy with his work. Just then, there was a knock on the door. He thought maybe it was Gruner. David called out her name, but there was no response. As soon as David moved forward with the lamp in his hand, some strange sounds started echoing in his ears, and then he saw that the hand of some strange creature was trying to come inside from under the gate. That hand was not human. David's heart filled with terror. He immediately ran towards the basement and hid there. Within a short while, that mysterious creature had entered the house. She was secretly searching for David. From a small crack in the basement, the terrifying eyes of that Crutcher stared at David. David picked up a knife, and as soon as his eyes came in front of the crack, he stabbed it with full force. She ran away, screaming at Crutcher, but she could come back at any time. David closed the basement door firmly, tied him tightly with a rope, and spent the whole night awake there, in the shadow of terror. The next morning, when David went out of the house, he saw some marks on the sand. The footprints were not human-like. It was absolutely clear. This was not the work of any human being. Those marks ended straight towards the sea. Now David understood everything. Why did Gruner place pointed logs around the lighthouse? Maybe for that same strange creature, and now David knows that this house is not safe for him at all. Maybe that Crutcher will come back again tonight. Frightened, David runs towards the lighthouse. He shouts at Gruner to open the gate. "I need to come in," but Gruner does not let him in and says that you should have returned with that ship. David returns, disappointed. But now he has to make his home safe. He closed every window of the house with wood. A fence was made with sharp sticks on all sides, and old papers and books were kept outside the gate. Then they sprinkled oil on them so that if the Crutcher came back, he could be scared away with fire. But there was one thing David didn't know yet, and he was going to find out tonight. Luckily, he found an old box inside the house. There was a gun and a lot of bullets in that box. Seeing this, he got some courage, but the fear was still alive. As the sun started setting, the darkness of night spread everywhere. David was sitting quietly in a corner of the house with the gun in his hand. His breathing was fast. Then suddenly a strange sound was heard. And when David stepped towards the window, it was as if the ground slipped from beneath his feet. Not just one, but many of the same strange creatures were seen rising from the water, and all of them were moving towards his house. Within a short while, he started trying to break the gate. David immediately opened fire. Some creatures fell down, but others became even more violent. He was now trying to enter the house. As their numbers started increasing, David, without wasting any time, set fire to the papers and old books kept outside the gate. Seeing the fire, those creatures returned back into the sea in fear. But now the same fire had reached David's house. The house had caught fire, and because the entire house was made of wood, the fire spread like lightning. David immediately saved himself by wrapping himself in a sheet, broke the gate, and came out and hid behind a big stone near the lighthouse. His right hand was badly burnt. Luckily, it started raining at that very moment. The fire slowly started extinguishing, but even after raining all night, David could not save his house till morning. The whole house was almost burnt to ashes. Coexistence and control. Now, if David wants to stay alive, he will have to take shelter in the lighthouse. He picked up his rifle and hid among the rocks near the lighthouse. When Gruner left the lighthouse to fetch water, David followed him. The intention was to take him at gunpoint and enter the lighthouse. But suddenly, when Gruner pointed the gun at him, a strange creature that was near Gruner attacked him. He was Crutcher, Gruner's keeper. Gruner immediately stopped David and said, "This is my pet." David did not fire a shot, but put a condition that if he wanted to stay alive, he should be allowed to stay in the lighthouse. He had enough gunpowder for a year and enough food to survive both of them. Gruner remained silent for a while, then slowly said yes. Before evening, both of them returned to the lighthouse with the remaining food. The next morning, Crutcher was quietly licking David's hand. While David was in deep sleep, within a short time, his hand got cured to a great extent. All this was a shock to David, but it was difficult to believe what was happening before his eyes. At the top of the lighthouse, David saw Gruner counting the bullets he had received from the gun, and that Crutcher was helping Gruner in his own way. This meant that this animal was not violent. David now wanted to find out more about it from Gruner and then reveal it to the world, because it was nothing less than a miracle. A strange female creature appeared in front of them from the deep darkness of the ocean. If the truth about this creature was revealed to the world, both David and Gruner would have become famous all over the world. But that's not what Gruner wants. He doesn't want to go anywhere from this island. Gruner had none of his own. According to him, no one can live alone in society. Everyone has to live as someone's slave or servant. That's why this island was perfect for him. This place where he considered himself a king, master of his own will. For this reason, he wrote about many parts of the island. Gruner is king. But that strange female creature? How did she become his pet? In fact, Gruner once saved her life. She was accidentally caught in his fishing net. The Crutcher was tiny then, and stayed with Gruner from that day on. Started obeying everything he said. But Gruner was an angry man, and never treated Crutcher humanely. He had regular physical relations with her. One time, Crutcher even attacked Gruner, and in return, Gruner punished her, a punishment which led to Crutcher thinking of herself as Gruner's maid. Perhaps that is why every night those creatures come out of the sea to take her back. But those Crutchers cannot attack in daylight. Well, David doesn't want to be here anymore. He wants to leave this place by sending a signal to any incoming ship. But this work was not so easy. Gruner said that no ship comes to this island. But David doesn't believe him. He doesn't enjoy living here at all anymore. He is feeling suffocated here. He wants to leave this place as soon as possible. It is getting evening. Gruner tells him to get ready with his gun because the Crutchers can attack at any time. They get ready to turn on the lighthouse lights, and within a short while, a large number of creatures come out from the sea. They are moving towards the lighthouse. Gruner continued to fire at them. But David was completely terrified. He began retreating inside the lighthouse. Despite Gruner's repeated requests, he just sat quietly in a corner, and within a short time, David fell unconscious. Gruner continued fighting those Crutchers alone. Broken minds and silent pacts. When David woke up the next morning, everything was quiet. Gruner was sitting silently near the edge of the rocks. His clothes were torn and his body had deep wounds. He looked like a warrior returning from a battle he never wanted to fight. Crutcher sat beside him, carefully cleaning the blood from his arm. David watched silently, guilt creeping up inside him. He had abandoned Gruner in the heat of battle, and yet they both were alive. But the peace was only temporary. The next few days passed with strange silence. David began observing Gruner more closely. He saw how Gruner's dominance over Crutcher was not just physical, it was psychological. Crutcher obeyed, but she didn't love. She followed, but she didn't trust. She slept outside the lighthouse, never inside. David slowly started bonding with her. He treated her with kindness, gave her fresh food, clean water, and even bandaged her wounds one night. Crutcher didn't say a word, but her eyes told stories. Stories of pain, captivity, and a longing to return home. David now believed Crutcher wasn't just some beast. She was intelligent, perhaps even more than both of them. And the Crutchers that emerged from the sea every night, they weren't attacking for blood. They were coming to rescue her. David confronted Gruner one evening. He asked, "Why don't you let her go? This isn't love. It's slavery." Gruner laughed a cruel, hollow laugh. "She belongs to me, just like this island, just like everything on it." That night, David stayed awake while Gruner slept. Crutcher sat outside near the rocks, gazing at the sea. David joined her. Under the starlit sky, she handed him a piece of driftwood with markings on it. Symbols. It wasn't random. It was a message. A map. That night, David saw something that shook him. Gruner, half drunk, dragged Crutcher by the arm and locked her inside a wooden cage beside the lighthouse. "To keep her from calling the others?" he muttered. David had had enough. He unlocked the cage at dawn and let her go. She didn't run. She didn't swim back to the ocean. She simply looked at David, confused, perhaps, but thankful. But when Gruner found out, his rage was volcanic. He screamed, "You ruined everything! She was mine! Mine!" and attacked David with an iron rod. They fought viciously, blood, fire, glass, and gunpowder flying. Crutcher ran between them, trying to stop the madness. She screamed a sound neither man had heard before, a deep, resonating cry that echoed into the sea. And then they came, hundreds of Crutchers rising from the water like ghosts in the mist. This time, they didn't attack. They surrounded the lighthouse and waited, silent, motionless, as if demanding justice. Gruner, bloodied and breathless, pointed his gun at Crutcher. "She doesn't leave. She's mine." David stepped forward. "No, Robert. She was never yours. She doesn't belong to anyone." Gruner hesitated, his eyes filled with a strange mix of hatred and heartbreak. For a moment, David saw a glimpse of the broken man beneath the monster. Then Gruner lowered the gun and whispered, "Then neither do I." He walked slowly toward the edge of the rocks and looked out at the sea. Crutcher moved closer. The other Crutchers made way for her. She stood by Gruner, looked into his eyes, and gently touched his hand. There was no hatred, only forgiveness. Then she turned and walked into the sea and disappeared. The last lightkeeper. The sea returned to stillness. The Crutchers slowly slipped beneath the waves, vanishing like mist under sunlight. David and Gruner stood there for what felt like hours. Two men, silent, broken, changed forever. Crutcher was gone, but not lost. She had returned to where she belonged. Gruner didn't speak for days. He would sit atop the lighthouse, staring endlessly at the horizon, sometimes mumbling, sometimes smiling to himself, as if remembering an old dream or a ghost. David spent his time fixing the damage, repairing the lantern, rebuilding the roof, writing in his journal. He recorded every detail, the creatures, the biology, the way they healed, the way they felt. He didn't want to forget. But he also knew the world wouldn't believe him, not without evidence. And the only proof had disappeared into the ocean's depths. One rainy evening, David walked into the lighthouse and saw something strange. Gruner wasn't drunk. He was clean-shaven, wearing his old Navy uniform, sitting on a wooden crate, looking straight ahead. "I've written my confession," he said quietly. "Everything about what I did, to her, to the others, to myself. It's in my journal. If someone ever comes, give it to them." David asked, "Why now?" Gruner smiled, not cruelly, not bitterly, just tired. "Because sometimes the sea gives you back your conscience." That night, David found him on the edge of the cliffs again. But this time, Gruner didn't jump. He just stood there as lightning split the sky and the waves roared below, watching, waiting. A prisoner, not of the island, but of his own guilt. Then he vanished. Not a sound, not a splash, just gone. David searched for hours, but found nothing. The next few days were quiet, eerily so. The Crutchers never returned. The sea remained calm. The air smelled different, clean, as if the island had taken a deep breath after years of torment. David decided to leave. He climbed the lighthouse one last time, lit the flame, set the lens to spin, and for the first time in weeks he saw it, a ship on the horizon, a freighter, maybe a military vessel. It was coming closer. He waved, fired a flare, and ran down to the shore. By the time the boat reached him, David was soaked, shaking, and smiling like a madman. They took him aboard, offered food, water, warmth. He told them everything, about the creatures, about the lighthouse, about Gruner and Crutcher. They didn't believe a word. But they found the journals. Gruner's and David's both, packed neatly in a weatherproof case. Years later, those journals became legend. Scientists called it folklore. Poets called it a tragedy. Historians debated whether the island even existed. But David? He knew. He never returned, never published his work, never sought fame. Instead, he lived quietly by the sea, lighting a small lantern every night, watching the waves in silence, waiting for the day when a soft shadow might rise from the water, and a pair of luminous eyes might meet his again. Because some stories don't end. They just go deeper. Epilogue. The echo beneath years past. The world changed, wars came and went, machines flew higher, and the oceans grew darker with secrets lost to time. But somewhere along the jagged coast of Portugal, an old man lived alone in a weather-beaten cottage overlooking the Atlantic. His name was David. Children from the nearby village whispered about him. Some said he was a mad sailor. Others believed he was a priest who once saw angels in the water. They never asked. They only watched from afar, as every night he walked out to the cliff's edge, lit a single lantern, and placed it upon a driftwood post he'd carved with strange symbols. The same symbols Crutcher had once given him. One stormy evening, years after he'd left that cursed island, David heard a familiar sound, a distant hum beneath the crashing waves, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat or a lullaby. He rose slowly, walked barefoot across the wet grass, and reached the cliff's edge once more. And there it was, a shape in the water, not monstrous, not terrifying, elegant, familiar, two glowing eyes. Crutcher. She didn't surface. She didn't need to. Her presence said everything. She had survived. She had lived free. And she remembered him. David fell to his knees. Tears mixed with rain. He raised his hand, trembling, and whispered, "You're safe now." The eyes lingered for a moment longer, then disappeared beneath the waves. Forever? Perhaps. Or maybe until the world is ready again. The sea holds many things. Wrecks, bones, dreams, and memories too painful for the land to carry. But deep beneath the abyss, between the silence and the storm, lies a story that once was whispered by creatures called Crutchers, a man who lost himself, another who found peace. And a bond that outlived the lighthouse, the war, and even time itself. And that was the story of a forgotten island, a haunted lighthouse, and a creature not of nightmares, but of misunderstood beauty. A story that reminds us that monsters aren't always what they seem, and sometimes it's our silence that haunts us the most. Welcome to Movie Shorts Hub, the channel where stories don't just entertain, they stay with you. Here, we explore the depths of forgotten films, cinematic masterpieces, and hidden gems, breaking them down into emotional, spine-chilling, and meaningful narratives. If you're someone who believes that a great story can shift your mind, stir your soul, or even change your life, then this channel was made for you. If today's journey made you pause, made you feel something, then we invite you to be part of this family. Make sure to like this video if the story gave you chills or left you thinking. Subscribe to Movie Shorts Hub for more stories that hit deeper than just visuals. Hit the bell icon so you never miss the next tale. We upload every week. And most importantly, leave a comment below. Tell us, was Crutcher a monster or a mirror? What would you have done in David's place? We believe storytelling is a two-way street. Your thoughts breathe new life into the stories we tell, and your voice matters here. Let's build a tribe where people don't just watch stories, they live them. Now, before we end today's tale, let's leave you with a few thoughts that linger, just like the waves on that haunted island. Motivational quotes to reflect on. Open quote. Not all monsters hide in darkness. Some are simply waiting for someone brave enough to see the light within them. The sea holds many things, secrets, regrets, and redemption. The question is, what are you willing to dive for? Sometimes the lighthouse isn't there to save you. It's there to remind you that you're not lost. Stories like this aren't fiction. They're metaphors for all of us, facing fear, guilt, and learning to forgive ourselves. Peace isn't the absence of monsters. It's the understanding that even monsters carry pain. We are Movie Shorts Hub, and we're just getting started. Together, let's dive deeper. Let's uncover the stories that the world forgot. Let's challenge what it means to be afraid and what it means to heal. This is your host name, signing off from Movie Shorts Hub. Stay brave, stay human. And as always, keep watching the shadows, because every shadow has a story.